It starts quietly. No one notices at first. You laugh when you are supposé tôt. You nod when others speak. And you say often, and for a moment, you almost believe it. But underneath the surface, something trembles. A soft vibration that never truly stops. It's the pulse of someone who feels everything too deeply, who has learned to sense the world through invisible threads of emotion. You were probably the child who noticed the mood of a room before anyone spoke. You could tell when your parents were fighting, even in silence. You could sense when someone was sad, even when they smiled. You thought it was normal that everyone could feel the temperature of hearts shifting like weather. But not everyone did. You were different. They told you that you were too sensitive. They said you needed to toughen up, to stop taking things so personally. But how could you not? When every small word carried weight, when every pause felt like rejection, when every silence echoed louder than shouting. You didn't choose to feel this much. You simply never learned how to stop. And somewhere along the way, you started believing that feeling deeply was a flaw. So you tried to become lighter, quieter, smaller. You apologized for emotions that were only trying to tell you the truth. You made yourself useful, kind, adaptable, because that's how sensitive people survive. If you can make everyone around you comfortable, maybe you won't be the one who gets hurt. You began to scan faces for danger. You learned the tone of disappointment before it arrived. You could sense when love was fading, long before anyone said it out loud. It's called hypervigilance, a body trained to predict pain. It's not intuition. It's survival. You carried this ability into adulthood, calling it empathy, calling it compassion. And in many ways, it is. But it's also exhaustion disguised as kindness. You became the emotional translator for everyone else. You noticed who was suffering, who was lonely, who needed reassurance. You made people feel seen, and that's a beautiful gift. But no one ever noticed that you were starving for the same thing you gave so freely, understanding. While you were reading everyone else's emotions, no one ever learned how to read yours. So you disappeared, not physically, but emotionally. You stopped sharing what hurt because you didn't want to be a burden. You stopped expressing joy because it felt childish. You began to exist quieter, happy. Navito sat as if the world would more up less space. You started calling that numbness peace. But the truth is, it isn't peace. It's self-abandonment dressed as calm. It's the art of vanishing while still being there. You go through the motions, working, talking, helping, but a part of you remains distant, watching life from behind a window that no one else can see. This is what happens when emotion becomes too heavy to carry openly. The mind hides it, the body stores it, and the soul waits for a moment safe enough to breathe again. You may find yourself crying at random, feeling waves of sadness with no clear reason. That's not weakness. That's memory, the emotional kind that has nowhere else to go. You've built a beautiful armor made of empathy. You know how to hold others, how to calm storms that aren't yours. But no one ever taught you how to rest, how to let yourself be held, how to be the one who breaks down and still feels safe. So you keep holding it in, hoping that strength will make the ache go away. It won't, because sensitivity isn't something to fix, it's something to understand. You feel deeply because you are deeply alive. You just learned too early that depth can scare people. And so, you tried to become shallow to belong. But the truth is, you were never meant to live on the surface. You are the mirror that reflects what others can't face. You are the silence that still feels everything. You are the one who listens while no one asks what's inside your own heart. You've become so used to carrying others that you've forgotten the weight of yourself. And maybe that's why, when things get quiet, you sometimes feel an ache you can't name. It is not loneliness. It is the echo of all the parts of you that never had space to speak. You learned to survive by disappearing. But now, you're gone even when you stay. But disappearance isn't the end of the story. It's where healing begins. Because one day, without planning os premier myself, it's quiet at first, almost like a memory trying to return. You can't quite name what's missing, but you know it's not love from others. It's your own presence, the part of you that used to feel everything before the world told you to stop. You begin to notice small moments again. The way sunlight touches a wall, the rhythm of your breathing, the tiny pause between your heartbeats. It's as if you're embodying Eros-Tiller. You've spent years learning to protect yourself from pain, but now the same sensitivity that once hurt you becomes the doorway back to life. Healing for people who feel too deeply doesn't come from silence or avoidance. It comes from permission, the permission to exist fully, to feel without apology, to stop shrinking just to make others comfortable. The goal isn't to feel less, but to feel safely, to know that intensity isn't chaos. It is truth. You start understanding that what you called overreacting was actually the body trying to release what it never could before. The tears, the exhaustion, the sudden emotions, they're not breakdowns, they're breakthroughs. Every sensation they avoided has been waiting patiently for you to turn toward it with compassion instead of shame. You realize now that your sensitivity wasn't fragility. It was intuition. It was the way your nervous system adapted to unpredictability. Every emotional surge was data, proof that you were paying attention to life on a level others couldn't see. You were never weak for feeling. You were wise. You did not know it yet. Slowly, you stop analyzing every feeling as a problem to solve. Instead, you begin to listen to them like visitors carrying messages. Anxiety tells you where safety was broken. Sadness tells you what still matters. Anger tells you where you've been silent too long. And joy, fragile, luminous joy, tells you that you're finally home again. Healing doesn't mean becoming calm all the time. It means learning that emotions are waves, not threats. You can ride them without drowning. You can cry without collapsing. You can love without losing yourself. Emotional maturity isn't about suppressing depth. It is about giving depth a structure strong enough to hold it. And maybe, for the first time, you start setting boundaries. Not to keep people out, but to keep yourself inside. You say no without guilt. You say yes because you mean it, not because you're afraid of disappointing someone. You stop performing peace and start building it. That's when you begin to see the difference between being nice and being kind. Niceness avoids conflict. Kindness speaks truth. You start to understand that empathy without direction is self-destruction. You can care for others, yes, but not at the expense of disappearing again. Love, in its purest form, doesn't require self-erasure. It invites presence. It says, "Come as you are and stay as you truly feel." This realization changes everything. Forgive the people who called you emotional, because now you sit werju, afraid of their own depth. You forgive yourself, too, for believing them. You understand now that you didn't feel too much. Others simply felt too little. There's a freedom in that truth. A kind of peace that doesn't come from detachment, but from integration. You stop fighting your nature. You stop apologizing for your heart. You learn that just with strength, and that make you weak you conscious. And little by little, you return. Not to who you were before, but to the version of you that's both tender and grounded, open and discerning. The part that knows sensitivity is a superpower when held with awareness. One day, someone will look at you, the real you, and feel peace. Not because you've hidden your emotions, but because you've made peace with them. You'll realize then that your depth was never the problem, it was the gift. The same heart that once absorbed everyone else's pain now radiates calm. You don't rescue people anymore. You remind them that they can rescue themselves. You'll still feel deeply, but it will no longer control you. You'll feel sadness without drowning in it, love without losing yourself in it, empathy without emptiness. That's the difference between reaction and resonance, between surviving emotions and living with them. And when life becomes quiet again, as it always does, you LL sit with your own heart and feel something you haven't felt in years, presence. No more running, no more pretending. Just you, fully awake, fully alive, fully feeling. You were never broken for caring too much. You were simply unprotected in a world that forgot how to care. But now you know how to hold yourself, softly, firmly, completely. You once learned to survive by disappearing. Now you are learning to live by returning. And maybe that's what it truly means to heal, to realize that feeling deeply was never your curse. It was your way back home.